Sideways Stories from Wayside School by Louis Sachar. Illustrated by Judy Brinklow. Chapter 3. Joe. Joe had curly hair, but he didn't know how much hair he had. He couldn't count that high. In fact, he couldn't count at all. When all of the other children went to recess, Mrs. Jewell told Joe to wait inside. "Joe," she said, "how much hair do you have?" Joe shrugged his shoulders. "A lot." "But how much, Joe?" "Enough to cover my head." Joe, you're going to have to learn to count," said Mrs. Jewell. "But Mrs. Jewell, I already know how to count," said Joe. "Let me go to recess." "First count to 10. Joe counted to 10. 6, 8, 12, 1, 5, 2, 7, 11, 3, 10. "No, Joe, that is wrong," said Mrs. Jewell. "No, it isn't. I counted until I got to 10. "But you were wrong," said Mrs. Jewell. "I'll prove it to you." She put 5 pencils on her desk. "How many pencils do we have here, Joe?" Joe counted the pencils. 4, 6, 1, 9, 5. "There are 5 pencils, Mrs. Jewell." "That's wrong." "How many pencils are there?" Joe asked. 5, said Mrs. Jewell. "That's what I said. May I go to recess now?" "No," said Mrs. Jewell. "You got the right answer, but you counted the wrong way. You were just lucky." She set 8 potatoes on his desk. "How many potatoes, Joe?" Joe counted the potatoes. 7, 5, 3, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. "There are 8 potatoes, Mrs. Jewell." "No, there are 8. "But that's what I said. May I go to recess now?" "No, you got the right answer, but you counted the wrong way again." She put 3 books on his desk. "Count the books, Joe." Joe counted the books. 1,000, 1,000,000, 3. 3, Mrs. Jewell. "Correct," said Mrs. Jewell. "May I go to recess now?" "No." "May I have a potato?" "No." "Listen to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now you say it." 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, said Joe. "Very good," said Mrs. Jewell. She put 6 erasers on his desk. "Now count the erasers, just the way I showed you." Joe counted the erasers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. "There are 10, Mrs. Jewell." "No." "Didn't I count right?" "Yes, you counted right, but you got the wrong answer." "This doesn't make any sense," said Joe. "When I count the wrong way, I get the right answer, and when I count right, I get the wrong answer." Mrs. Jewell hit her head against the wall 5 times. "How many times did I hit my head against the wall?" she asked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. "You hit your head against the wall 10 times. "No." 4, 6, 1, 9, 5. "You hit your head 5 times. Mrs. Jewell shook her head no and said, "Yes, that is right." The bell rang, and all the other children came back from recess. The fresh air had made them very excited, and they were laughing and shouting. "Oh, now I missed recess." "Hey, Joe, where were you?" asked John. "You missed a great game of kickball." "I kicked a home run," said Todd. "What's wrong with you, Joe?" Joy asked. "Nothing. Mrs. Jewell was just trying to teach me how to count." "You mean you don't know how to count?" Joy laughed. "Counting is easy," said Mauricia. Now, what's easy for you may not be easy for Joe, and what's easy for Joe may not be easy for you." "Nothing's easy for Joe," said Mauricia. "I can beat you up." "Try it," said Mauricia. "That will be enough of that," said Mrs. Jewell. She wrote Mauricia's name under the blackboard under the word discipline. Joe put his head on the desk between the 8 potatoes and 6 erasers. "Don't feel bad, Joe. I just don't get it. I'll never learn how to count." "Sure you will," said Mrs. Jewell. "One day it will just come to you. You'll wake up in the morning and suddenly you'll be able to count." "If all I have to do is wake up, what am I going to school for?" "School just speeds things up," said Mrs. Jewell. "Without school, it might take another 70 years before you wake up and are able to count. By that time, I may have no hair left on the top of my head." "Exactly. That is why you go to school." When Joe woke up the next day, he knew how to count. He had 55,006 hairs on his head. They were all curly. Chapter 4 is Sherry. Sherry had long eyelashes. She weighed only 49 pounds. She always wore a big red and blue overcoat with a hood. The overcoat weighed 35 pounds. The red part weighed 15 pounds, the blue part weighed 15 pounds, and the hood weighed 5 pounds. Her eyelashes weighed a pound and a half. She sat next to the window in Mrs. Jules's class. She spent a lot of time just staring out the window. Mrs. Jules didn't mind. Mrs. Jules said that a lot of people learn best when they stare out the window. Sherry often fell asleep in class. Mrs. Jules didn't mind that either. She said a lot of people do their best learning when they are asleep. Sherry spent all of her time either looking out the window or sleeping. Mrs. Jules thought she was the best student in class. One afternoon, it was very hot. All of the windows were open, yet Sherry still wore her red and blue overcoat. The heat made her very tired. Mrs. Jules was teaching arithmetic. Sherry pulled her hood up over her face, buried herself in the coat, and went to sleep. "Mrs. Jules," said Kathy, "Sherry is sleeping." "Good. She must be learning something." Mrs. Jules continued with her lesson. Sherry began to snore. "Shh, shh." "Mrs. Jules, Sherry is snoring," said Kathy. "Yes, I can hear her. She must be learning an awful lot today. I wish the rest of you could be like her." Sherry began to toss and turn. She flopped over on the top of her desk and then rolled over onto the top of Kathy's desk, and then she rolled back the other way. Kathy screamed. Sherry rolled out the window. She was still sound asleep. Now, as you know, Mrs. Jules's class was on the 30th story of Wayside School, so Sherry had a long way to go. After she had fallen 10 stories, Sherry woke up. She looked around. She was confused. She wasn't Mrs. Jules's class, and she wasn't home in bed. She couldn't figure out where she was. She yawned, pulled the hood back over her eyes, and went back to sleep. By that time, she had fallen another 10 stories. Wayside School had an exceptionally large playground. Lewis, the art teacher, was on his way over to the other side of it when he happened to see Sherry fall out the window. He ducked under the volleyball net, hurtled past the kickball field, hopped over the hopscotch court, climbed through the monkey bars, and sped across the grass and caught Sherry just before she hit the ground. The people in Mrs. Jules's class cheered. Sherry woke up in Lewis's arms. "Oh, Lewis, why'd you go and wake me up for?" "I'm sorry, Sherry." I'm sorry. Is that all you can say? I was having a wonderful dream until you woke me up. You're always bothering me, Lewis. I can't stand it." She laughed and hugged him around the neck. Lewis carried her back up 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jules's room. That evening, when Sherry went to bed, she was unable to fall asleep. She just wasn't tired.